Hi, so you ended last week's lesson with the question of, is there a difference between doing good and doing no harm? And so I hope you actually gave that some consideration, because that's where we're going to start today. So who decides what's good and what's harm, right? So who am I to say that what's good for me is harmful for you, or what's good for you is harmful for me? Well, obviously it's the society that we're in and the people groups that we belong to. Every community faces different challenges. So what's good for me may not be good for someone in a different community. For example, if it is important for people in my community to eat a certain type of food, or to go to a certain type of community activity, or to be involved in certain cultural events, that's important for them. If I don't participate in those things, it could be harmful to my community. In another part of the world, they may not care, it may not be a big deal, right? If you live in a place where there's very little pollution, if your company pollutes just a little bit, well, you don't want that, but it's kind of not that big a deal, right? Because no one else pollutes, so it's okay. But if you are in a part of the world where everybody's polluting and it's just compounding the situation and making it worse and worse, then yeah, a little bit of pollution adds up, because everybody's having a little bit of pollution and it makes it really bad. So every community faces different challenges, and what's good for one may not be good for another. Well, how do you decide what's good for the community? And you see the image down there at the bottom. It says Google versus, and that's the flag for Iran. A few years ago, there was some issues, and I won't get into everything, but basically Iran said that Google, their citizens could not access Google or Gmail because they thought that it was harmful, and they didn't like some of the images and things that were being put on YouTube and things like that they were accessing through Google. And so they decided, the Iranian government decided, that Google was the bad guy. And so they didn't let their employees, didn't let their citizens access it for a long time. So why didn't Google just say, well, to heck with you, I don't want to offer it anyway. I'm not willing to offer my services to a country that's going to constantly filter me and not let me be able to run my business the way it should be ran. Well, because Google at least felt that they had an obligation, a duty to provide service to the Iranian people. Because through Google, the Iranian people were able to access information they couldn't get otherwise. And in a sense, Google was providing a social benefit to the people of Iran, because they were letting them have access to information and news they wouldn't have otherwise. So you can't regulate good, but you can regulate do no harm, right? So I can't tell you, you have to do good, you have to be nice, you have to play well with others. But what I can do is say you can't steal from these people, you can't pollute their air, you can't pollute their water, and you have to offer fair prices. That's where the regulation comes into place. And again, we've talked before already about the spirit of the law, but it comes into play constantly. We can't regulate everything. We can't have a law in place for everything. So that's why it's so important to make sure that companies are willing to follow the spirit of the law and do what's right, even if the law doesn't outline every possible alternative. Should social responsibility be voluntary? Well, I don't know. It depends, right? Are employee benefits a social responsibility? And I know we've got the socialized health care now, and you may call it Obamacare. And I know you say, well, okay, it's kind of being forced upon us, but there's lots of things out there that are outside of the health benefits that a lot of employees are kind of starting to expect, and they feel like it's the company's responsibility to provide them. So for example, should employers pay for addiction counseling? Well, it's not my fault you got addicted to these drugs, and it's not my fault you have anger issues, and it's not my fault XYZ, whatever you want the issue to be. But for employers, if they are offering anger management classes or addiction counseling courses or any other concern, problem, bankruptcy, helping people learn to budget their money, right? They are in effect offering social responsibility courses to their employees, which is a good thing because it benefits the employees, which benefits their family, which in the long term benefits the community that this company is in. So you could look at it as a social responsibility. If I am Walmart and I feel like I need to teach my employees to better handle their money and to budget their resources properly, then I'm offering a social benefit to the community that I'm in. Well, how does a should evolve into a must over time, right? And I think insurance is a perfect example. Companies were offering health insurance because employees wanted it, but also because it provided a healthier workforce. And we've talked about that before. If I have a healthy workforce, it means they're coming into work consistently, they're not sick, they're focused, they're paying attention, which means more money in my pocket in the long run. So that has become a must. Well, there's different examples of that, right? In the 1900s, the Hawthorne electric work It was a really cool study done. If you've had organizational behavior, I'm sure you've talked about this, but this guy came in called Elton Mayo. He was a researcher. He went into Hawthorne Electric Works, and he messed with these women. And that's the best picture I could find for you, because it was a long time ago, early 1900s. Right? And he went in and he started doing things. They took a group of women and started doing things to them. Like, he made the lighting bright, made it dark, gave them rest periods, gave them food, didn't give them any food, didn't give them any breaks. Right there is before OSHA, so they could do all this kind of stuff to them. And what they found was that it didn't matter what they did, the productivity to these women increased every single time, right? Now, eventually there came a point where they just, because of physics, they just couldn't get any faster. But the women continuously improved over time. And what blew their minds at the time was the fact that when asked, the women said, well, because you cared about me, you asked about me. And that was the beginning of our HR movement, so human resources. That was kind of what initiated the idea that, oh, we should care about our employees. We should ask them, see what they feel about things, how they react to certain things. And because of that, now we have HR departments. We have whole laws and sets of governing bodies associated with human resources. And it all kind of initiated with this one study that looked at people and tried to figure out, he was trying to improve productivity. And in the end, created a whole movement of, if I care about my people, if I pay attention to what they want and what they need, they're going to work harder, which is going to make more money for me. Right? School lunches is another one. And if you see in the background there's the cookie and the cheeseburgers and stuff and the french fries, good old American food. But school lunches initially started off as a push from the military, because the people coming into the military were scrawny and underfed, and these poor young men were malnourished. And so the military personnel pushed through the school system to get school lunches in place so that the students are well fed at least 1 or 2 meals a day, and they are more likely to put on weight. Well, that was great back then in the 1940s and 50s, but now we have obesity problems. And so what became a should evolved into a must, and now we're looking at it again as a should. Does it need to change? So things change over time. Everything is constantly evolving in the business world. All right. You're going to start the Carroll article now. You've already read it, and you've uploaded your summaries, and you've done your interesting comment. So from this point on, it's pretty much going to be focused on the article. Just some things to kind of talk about. This was the general model he presented. It's a 3-dimensional model talking about the social responsiveness. Are they proactive? Are they reactive? Which issues do they get involved with? How do they decide which issues to get involved with? Their responsibilities all along the way. It's a pretty interesting article. I know it's kind of a little dry, but this was a very foundational piece for the development of this area of research, and so it kind of gives you a basis for economic, legal, discretionary responsibilities. And you will see this model repeatedly over and over in articles we read from this point on.